Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. Today for our Ditch Clips series, we're going to look at using children's lit to kind of help us build some emotional knowledge with our friends. So our littles really need to start to learn a lot about emotions. They need to be able to label an emotion. They need to be able to understand causes of emotions so that they can fix them if possible. And they also need to start to develop the ability to regulate those emotions within themselves. So one of the base level things I do is a lot of children's lit that deals with emotions. So I work that back into the curriculum at the K level, and you can do this at the first grade level as well, while dealing with things like beginning, middle, and end, and character and setting and things like that, but using things that are kind of fueled by emotions as well is helpful. With your younger kids, you can do it just as an emotion lesson, and that's absolutely fine. So this one here is one I hope you're already familiar with, the Bears series. It's by Karma Wilson, and I like using the same kind of characters over and over again because the kids start to feel a sense of connectedness to it and a safety with it. With Bears Feel Scared, another component I really like about this particular book is that his friends try and make him feel better. So it's really starting to lay the groundwork for that idea of empathy, where we can then go, hey, our friend feels sad, what can we do to make him feel better? And we can kind of go back to that when we're seeing friends that are sad. Sorry, I'm filming at school, so things like that are going to happen. But we can go back to that book and kind of draw from that experience and go, hey, what did Bear's friends do to make Bear feel better when we see a friend that's sad in our classroom? This is another really good series, PK Hallinan, probably mispronouncing their name, but they have several in the series. This is My Teacher, things like that. And this one is That's What a Friend Is. And so I like to use this one because that whole idea of caring and kindness, that feeling of safety, it's a great one to kind of put an action to the feeling of friendship, the feeling of love and caring and concern. So a great one there to spur some dialogue. This one, I think we all know Llama. We love our red pajamas, right? I have a 2.5-year-old at home, so we definitely read a lot of Llama, red pajama. This one's a really good one too, though. Llama Mad at Mama. And the reason why I think this is a really good one for emotional control and emotional dialogue is that Llama gets real upset and throws a temper tantrum at the store, and I think most kids can relate to that on some level. And what's great is instead of Mama getting mad, Mama helps him fix the problem. And I think it's really important for kiddos to understand that you can lose control, but regain that control and fix the problem. It's not the end of the world. And some kids view a mistake or an error or a loss of control as something that is kind of life-shattering in the moment, and they realize that they're still alive later. But for them, it seems so big in the moment. So this kind of helps remind them that even, hey, when you're in that kind of loss of control and you feel just all these big feelings, that's okay. And there are adults that are there to kind of rein you back in and help you out. And it kind of focuses on the fixing of the problem versus just the fit itself, which I absolutely love. And it's got lots of literacy components as well. So great one if you haven't checked that one out. By the same author, No Bunny's Perfect. I think this is a great one because it talks about a bunny making mistakes, and we talk a lot about growth mindset and fixing our errors and things like that. So I think this is a really great one, especially with your kinders and firsties, to talk about that. Some of these books definitely work across age groups. I would probably be able to work this in with my 3s pretty easily and your 4s pretty easily as well. And some of them might be a little bit too hard for them, and you will need to kind of modify it. For example, some of my Chesterracoon books that I really like might be a little too big as far as the vocabulary and the amount of words for some of your younger kids. So I always recommend putting a sticky with the main points you want to make sure you hit on the page. And I always let them know, for reading's sake, that hey, there's a lot of words in here. And so I'm going to retell the story using the pictures, because picture reading is another kind of reading. And I'm going to put my own story to the pictures. And that's absolutely okay, as long as you're letting your littles know you're doing that. So this one here, it is a Chesterracoon book by Audrey Penn. This one's called Acorn Full of Memories, and Chester loses a friend, and they all talk about different memories they have with that friend. And I had the pleasure of listening to Audrey Penn speak about how she came up with the idea for this book, and she actually looked across cultures and was able to see that one thing that they all had in common when somebody passed away was that they did talk about the great memories you had with somebody. So a great book to kind of touch on that. I know some of the times our kids lose relatives, so it's something that we can really bring into the classroom as far as dealing with those negative, sad emotions. Another good one, especially for the area that I'm recording this video in, I live in the Hampton Roads area, and I am a Navy brat myself. So we moved a lot as a kid, and that's something hard to deal with for children, whether it's themselves moving or whether it's the friends around them that are leaving. And most of us in my school division have that happen quite frequently throughout the school year. This one here is called A Kiss Goodbye, and it is about Chester moving. So it's a great one to kind of spur those conversations with your kids. Talk about all the feelings that come with it. You know, how are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way? What can we do when we feel that way? Can you think of another time you felt that way? Things like that. I think most of us have seen this series already, 'Twas the Night Before. I love these Night Before books, and now they have them for all kinds of events. The Tooth Fairy. I'm pulling out the Thanksgiving one because Thanksgiving's coming up at the time of this video recording. And I think sometimes as adults we take for granted that kids just enjoy these kind of magical moments that we're going to remember forever. But we forget that these events can also be full of a lot of emotions for our littles. You know, anxiety, anticipation, nervousness. You know, some of these holidays that we take for granted that we know all the routines and the customs for, they're still learning those customs, and each family even has different customs within it. So kind of reading these things and talking about what's going to happen and kind of prepping them up helps them so that when you have all these relatives come over, you go over to the relative's house, you're eating a special meal, they really know what to expect. That fear of the unknown is big for our littles. They get anxious because they have that fear of the unknown. They don't know what's going to happen because they haven't experienced it a lot. You know, if you're talking about a 3-year-old, how many Thanksgivings have they had? You know, you're talking about a 5-year-old, they might have only had 6. So you really want to think about that they haven't had enough time to really build that schema up for what to expect in these different situations. So literature can really help with that. So I love that series for that. Another really good series, an author to kind of follow for some of those feelings is Todd Parr. He does have Feel Good Book, and kind of along the same vein is the Feelings book. And what I really like is that his illustrations are really easy to mimic. So it's great starting point for a class book if you wanted to talk about feelings and how you deal with them. And each child can have a different feeling or a feeling they choose and things like that. So there's a lot of possibilities with these as kind of jumping points for the beginning of a discussion. So speaking of beginnings of discussions, I know I've mentioned empathy a couple of times, and I really feel like empathy and understanding of others is a huge thing that we need to teach our littles. And developmentally, it's very hard for them. And just like when we taught them to say the word ball, we didn't just go, oh, that's hard, they're not ready, I'm not going to talk to that infant. No, we keep introducing that concept in different ways. We keep scaffolding that learning. So the same is going to hold true for the whole idea of empathy. 2 books I really like to kind of help with that idea of how we can help others is going to be our bird books. This one here is Boo-Hoo Bird, and this one here is Grumpy Bird. And in both of them, our friend Bird is having some issues, and his friends work towards making him feel better with helping him out. So it's a great way to kind of create a dialogue with your students about, hey, if your friend is feeling grumpy, what can you do to make them feel better? What makes you feel better when you're grumpy? And really starting to get that list. When we talked about apologies and we said, hey, the children don't have that bank of knowledge to really draw from to create a list of ways to make them feel better, it's important that we help them with that. And these kind of books can really help that. And the same with Boo-Hoo Bird, where Bird gets a boo-boo and his friends work to make him feel better. And in both of these books, it doesn't work right away. And so that's, again, something to kind of work with our children on. And we talk a lot about growth mindset and the power of yet. And in both of these books, hey, it doesn't work the first time they try and make him feel better, but as they continue to try different things, it does work. All right. Also try and look for things you can kind of have in your back pocket if parents ask for resources. So these are 2 that I don't typically share unless a parent comes to me with a need. So this one here is about divorce. And what I really like, it's called It's Not Your Fault, Coco Bear, and it's by Vicki Lansky. And what I really enjoy is that the author put these little tidbits for parents on the bottom. And we all know a lot of parents that are going through divorce or separations, and it's quite common in early childhood for that to happen. And it's great to be able to have things that if a parent goes, hey, do you have any resources? My child's really struggling with this. What can you suggest? That I can go, oh, I actually have a book you can borrow. Here you go. So this is one I keep for that. Gotta love when the lights go off. Hold on one second. There we go. And this is another one. Sesame Street has a lot of really good books and resources. This is a DVD set for children with incarcerated parents. And I'd also check out my friend Q, author Q as she is known now, wrote a book called Our Moms for children of incarcerated parents. And so that's another great read. And her organization has resources for parents and children and families that are struggling in that kind of situation as well, to kind of help build and strengthen their relationships. So definitely look for resources that you can kind of have in your back pocket and you can pull out. You know, it's not something that I'm going to go, hey, I heard this was happening, but it's something that as a teacher I'm going to be aware of and kind of stand back, and if they need something, be ready with resources for them. So kind of keep that in mind as well, because they're still trying to teach their children emotional maturity and emotional growth as well. So those are just some ways that I use literature in my classroom to kind of spur some of that conversation with my littles. I'd love to hear some of the books you guys use and some of the resources you use, and in future videos coming up here in the next couple days, we'll talk about how I can use those and how you can use those to do a little bit more depth with them. And also how I do emotional instruction using several other tools with my littles in the classroom, whether it was with preschoolers, so 2s and 3s, or whether it's with our big kids over here with K and 1. So thank you for joining us. Remember to hashtag ditchtheclips to keep the conversation going, and visit me on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you, and have a great night. Bye.